So welcome to this month's GRIP-Birkman Coaches Cafe. We've got some really exciting things to talk about. We're talking specifically about the changes that are coming, and we're starting to get into that just a little bit with the changes that are coming to the GRIP-Birkman reports as of November. And John Blake, the leader of our leadership team, our team coordinator. John, I'm going to ask you to kick things off right off the bat, since I know you have to leave early today, to talk to us a little bit about why the changes are coming and in broad strokes what those changes mean for us.
Yeah, definitely. Well, good morning, guys, and honor to be here. And sorry I have to leave, but when your 15-month-old has her checkup, you know that the doctor, rumor has it that you should support your wife that way. So I'm loving my 15-month-old who's a trip and chasing around the house, grabbing onto the refrigerator when she's hungry, and now she's learning how to do the I don't know with her hands, so that's kind of fun too, to ask her random questions and then say, I don't know on all of this. And so as we dive into some of these changes, there are going to be certain things where I may throw up my hands and say, we don't know quite yet, but we do know a lot of things. And so we're excited about what's going on and what's happening in the community and where we're headed. And you know, before we talk about some of the specifics, just some of the things that we had been hearing, and mentioned this in the newsletter, but we had just been hearing that some people were confused with the complexity, and I think we all saw the redundancy in the report and wondered why are we getting the same information essentially in the same report a few times, and if we're about teams and helping people understand in a team setting, then we don't talk about team building a whole lot in our coaches training, since it is a coaches training. And so how can we emphasize that more? And so there were just a few things where we just said as a community, wow, what can we be doing to ease the way of our coaches and trainers? And so we really wanted to unpack what that meant. So really this process started last year, where we got together at our user group in Indianapolis and really just started asking the question, what would help, what would improve your experience as a coach or trainer as you're using this information, as you're unpacking it with people. And a lot of what we got was, let's look at the report set. Let's look at our coaches training to see if we're really getting at it. Let's look at the support organization, because right now we don't, we're not feeling as supported as we would like to when we're trying to actually order our reports. And so all of these things came up, and as then a leadership team, we took those things and we said, all right, Lord, what does this mean? What would you have for us then in this season? And so as a team, we've been committed to bringing the community the improvements that become available, and really in the midst of this, staying true to our core values, staying true to community, staying true to Ida We, and not allowing those things to change, because those define us. Those are who we are. That's why we're all here. It's not because we love a really great assessment. It's because we believe in the values and the paradigms that we get to train, that we get to walk through. And so that being said, then we really believe that these changes that we're looking at are going to align us even more as a community to our values, align us more with the scripture and what it teaches us about body life, about living together in unity, and the challenges of that. And so with this, we started to look at these different things, and obviously we've announced and already made the transition to having a GRIP-Birkman Inc., to actually having an organization that or an entity that can support us. So we're decreasing some of those dependencies on others while maintaining an outstanding relationship with Birkman. And then it came to the report set and to the training. And so that's really where we are right now. And this is now what we're leading up to in November. And so by high levels, we've looked at the base level report and we've looked at the component level report. And with the changes that Birkman has made internally, we've looked at those. We've said, how do those fit for our community when we combine it with the GRIP? What is the impact going to be? What is potentially not there? What is staying the same? And we've, as a leadership team, looked at it and feel that the basic report and the signature report, along with your leadership GRIP, that these two components are really going to help you as coaches and trainers, as well as then us as we're dealing with people that are just trying to understand themselves, trying to give them that platform, trying to give them a venue to really have a more visual context, a more easily understood language, and the ability then to use this. We were I'll say frustrated. It really wasn't something that we felt truly was acceptable for us to not have people leaving the training where they were saying, I love it, and there's so much information, I'm just too overwhelmed. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do anything with it. And so we felt like we had to address that. And so really that's where the changes came from, was this call from the community to help us be able to handle it better. So the base level, Larry and Jay and Ken will walk us through some of those things, the signature report, and then the training model. And we really felt like if we are going to equip people to be able to walk out of our training and feel like they can truly get their hands around it, then we need to narrow the scope and we need to get better and deeper into what we're talking about. And that's what it's about. We're going to narrow the focus so we can get better and deeper understanding, and better and deeper results, better and deeper interaction, better and deeper questions, and wrestling with the material, rather than give them a fire hose and let's see what sticks. And so with this narrowed focus, we're excited about the impact that it's going to have on teams. We're excited about the impact that individuals are going to have, and ultimately that coaches, people that come to this training, are going to feel like they've practically experienced it in a way that then leads them directly into being able to use it powerfully. So those are a lot of the significant changes, are obviously the report sets and the training framing for that. Some exciting new additions that we're going to be able to offer around some new reports that we haven't had before, that Larry's going to talk us through. And the idea, if we're talking about team, one of the important things is, can we begin to get some team reports? Can we begin to see how these teams actually fit together in both a lifestyle grid? Could we get a report that had everybody on the same lifestyle or Birkman map now? Can we do that? Can we get some of these new reports to where we can see as a group what we look like? And then translating that into us on the GRIP side being even more proficient, more skilled, and having more ways to equip coaches and trainers to dig into team styles and bodybuilding roles as well, that will sync and that will fit together with that. So a lot of the why, a lot of what's changing, but ultimately core values are not changing. And there are going to be some disruptions. We understand people are going to have to learn and get up to speed on different things. We're going to have to learn some new vocabulary. And ultimately, we know that this is going to take a while for us. So November 1st, the flip will switch and everyone will be on the new reports. We won't be doing dual reports. When we switch, everyone will be making that move together. But that is what we're looking at. And we believe this is where the community can benefit, where we can go together.
Great. Thanks, John, for that concise and direct report about why the changes are coming and what we're hoping will be accomplished by those. I know that you guys are likely going to have some questions, but what I'd like to do is, unless you have specific questions for John that he needs to answer before he leaves, I'd like to go ahead and get into the report and kind of walk through what those changes are, so that would perhaps answer some of your questions ahead of time. But if anybody does have a burning question for John related to what he said right now, then by all means, unmute your mic and speak up, and go ahead and share that with us. And if any of you need to type in your answers for your questions or anything for any reason, Jay will be watching for those also in the chat window. All right, then I'm going to plow ahead. If you didn't have a burning question that jumped up really quick, if you've got a real high thought score right now, then that's good. Hang on to that. Keep mulling over it. We'll give you a chance for some questions, and hopefully we'll have some answers at the end of our session today.
Hey, Larry, can I go ahead and ask a question? Just for clarification, John,
Sure.
is the base on the newsletter, there were two reports, the base report and the signature report. Current coaches will have access to both of those, right? And will continue. The newly trained coaches, what will they have access to?
They will only have access to the basic report. And again, that's removing some of the areas for potential confusion. For them, it's giving them the ability to understand. And frankly, after many discussions with a lot of our key trainers and coaches that are using the base level, really feel that there's more than enough meat there, especially with some of the new reports that we're going to have access to really do powerful team builds, to do powerful one-on-one coaching. And yet we still have the higher level, if people choose to do that, go through the signature training, either the GRIP-Birkman with Larry and Susan and Steve Hoke, or go to Birkman and go through their signature training. But yes, as coaches essentially will be grandfathered in because they have been trained on the components. And even that, Larry will take us through some significant changes in that area, to where as current coaches are looking at the signature report, you will want to make sure that that you've spent some time with Larry and Susan, or come to the celebration to really understand and unpack some of those things and why they are the way they are. And Larry will be spending time between now and November 1st as well in some different venues. But really November 1st there at the celebration, we'll do that. So yeah, grandfathered in, new coaches, base report only.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, now that's new coaches trained after now, basically. But all of our existing coaches, as John said, will be honorary grandfathers, and will be able to have the signature report because of its similarity to the component report that we have had up to this point. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as I'm going to go ahead and share this screen with you, so we can everybody see that monthly newsletter right now? Good. Okay, you see that's the newsletter that just came out yesterday. I'm going to go down here in John's message, and I'm going to click on that signature GRIP report that he said. That is a link. So here it comes, and we can see John Q. Public's report. And I'm just going to walk through his signature report. The reason I'm going to walk through the signature report is because the basics report is in the signature report. The signature report just adds the components to the basics report. So let's walk through his signature report. You'll see what both new coaches and existing coaches, and then in the future, new people who are going through signature training, what they will have access to as the basic, the root signature report. There's more that goes with this, and we'll talk about that a little bit later also. First of all, you do have a table of contents. Hooray.
Hey, Larry, can I interrupt you just real quick? I'm sorry. If you guys don't want to speak up but have a question as he's talking, go down to the participant icon, open that up, and you can click a button that says raise your hand.
By all means.
And interrupt Larry for your question.
Yeah, that'll be great. You can type those questions in as we go, and then Jay will be able to synthesize those for us at the end. Thank you for that clarification.
Sorry, Larry.
No, that's fine. That's great. So, and for those of you that are watching the recording right now, please don't try to type in a chat, but you can send us an email. That'll be great. We'll try to answer those questions as well. So what's in your Birkman report? This is the first really great thing that has been asked for years, where we're able to see the table of contents, and there is consecutive numbering of the report. Again, there's a quick welcome, and we'll see, some of the brief history, background, and purpose of the Birkman method. And then there's the emphasis here that we've always had on color. This is not changing. The colors or the meanings of the colors does not change, but here's just a general description of the four colors. The red doer with some description of that, communicator, analyzer, thinker. Those are not changing. However, you notice that we are now calling yellow the analyzer. That is a change, and I'm not going to refer to old terminology. I'm just going to point out where the new terms are now because we're wanting to start getting accustomed to using the new terms. So referring to the yellow as the analyzer. And you'll see some very familiar language in the descriptions. In fact, many of the descriptions that you're going to see have not changed at all. Hardly any of them have. Then we start getting into what we now call the Birkman map. And you'll see some significant change in this as well, because of the gradation that you have in the map, where we know that people are not, when they're plotted on the map, you know, they're not pure red. Everybody doesn't show up in the far left top corner of the red, or if they have green, they don't show up in the far right corner of the green. We will often, as John Q here has green interests, but they're moving in the direction of the red. They're moving in the direction of the yellow, and he may even have a little bit of blue that's pulling him down here. So his description of his interests will be somewhat different than the description of someone who has interests way up higher in the green. So this is true of all the colors, and here's an attempt, Birkman's first attempt, to show some kind of gradation of colors according to where you're plotted on the map. The interests, usual behavior, needs, stress behavior, that stays the same. Those descriptions stay the same. The names stay the same. But you'll see on the map that there is one change, and that is we no longer talk about just the type of communication that the person likes when they're moving to the top of the map or the bottom of the map. At the top, we're now talking about extrovert or extroversion. And at the bottom, introvert or introversion. Those were terms that Dr. Birkman actually used in his original research, but they were not in common usage in English language at that time. So he used other words to describe this. Now, extrovert and introvert are very much in common language, so we're actually coming back to some original terminology when we're bringing those two terms back to the map. There is an explanation of the map then getting into the detail with the asterisk, and in this case, with John Q. Public, you see how his asterisk shows some of these things that are pretty solidly green in their description. And each individual's report is, of course, customized, and so it will have what your interests are according to your report. And you'll get into the same thing with the usual behavior, the diamond. And in this case, where John Q. Public is way over to the right, you'll see a whole lot of the people side language, but there's also getting down toward the blue where you'll see these words, also, you also tend to be, that kind of language is in there. We've seen that before, but it's just in this more concise report with a little bit less verbiage and more pointed getting to the report. Your circle, again, stays the same in this case. And by the way, you'll notice the colors that are with, as they are, the diamond in John's case is green, his circle is yellow. Okay, it looks gold, but we need that for the purpose of printing and showing up on the screen. We're still going to call this yellow. So you see his description then of his needs, very similar to what we have seen in the past, and the description of his stress behavior. And you'll see also in his case, pretty solidly yellow, but recognizing that he does have some drawing, some of his other, if we were to get deeper into his components, we would be able to see why some of his components are not absolutely completely yellow. But now we're only looking at the basics report. Then we get into the detail with your interests. And what we will see now is how the interests are presented. 10 interests, they're still the same. There are a couple of differences, only one really in terms, or two in terms of the names. Technical, now, we're referring to as the hands-on work, and administrative. You might remember that as a different one, but I said I'm not going to use old terminologies. We're only going to talk about the new. So you'll see that there are changes in those two names, but the descriptions stay pretty much exactly the same. These are presented now, these percentages are percentile presentations of your interests. So according to other people who are in these types of jobs, because it is matched to the job categories, how closely your answers or your preferences were looking at your interests and your career choices as you were forced to do that in your questionnaire, how closely those match with other people who are in these fields professionally. So John Q comes up 82 percentile with social service and 76 with persuasive, and his lowest is literary. And these are listed in order, top, left to right. So his top 4, and this is personalized for John Q. Public. So he's social service, persuasive, numerical, and technical are his top 4. But look, artistic is awfully close to technical. We would probably want to look at that too as we were talking with John about his report. His lowest is literary. It doesn't get down to that danger area of the 10% or less, but guess what? It's still his lowest. It's still the thing that he is least interested in compared to his report. So an easy way to do that with individuals and with teams is looking at, say, the top 4 and looking at the bottom 1 or even the bottom 1 or 2 sometimes. Again, the language is going to look very similar, but you see the activities that they might enjoy, and there's a great opportunity in your conversation to talk about, so what about you? What kind of activities do you enjoy? This list or some others that you think about, and how do you get that, how do you address those interests? It almost becomes a need in the person's life, and we can talk about it, but we talk about it more from the standpoint of their underlying motivation and how that relates to their usual and their stress behaviors. So then we would get into behaviors, but guess what? We don't go any farther than this with the basics report, except I need to skip over here to show you real quickly in his basic report, you do get these 2 reports. You get the insights report. There is one of those. Your strengths only is the one that's in the basics report. This report is pulling from the components and from the interests and from the needs, and it comes up with something, some statements here that you might recognize are very similar to statements that were in the coaching report. With the signature suite, there is still access to a coaching report. It is still the same as the coaching report that we have known in the past. However, it's only available to people who have done signature training. Even coaches who can receive the signature report will not have access to that coaching report. However, you can take this strengths report, you can get a lot of the same things from it, and there's an exercise that we're included in our coaches training that we're going to be sharing with you in November. There's an exercise that you can do that helps you to actually write your own coach's report. So it really is what you would want your supervisor or one of your coworkers to know about you, to say, here are some things I would like for you to know about me and how you can help me to be a more productive member of the team. So yes, the coaching report is not there, but I think we're going to have something that can be even better than the coaching report by using this strengths report with your leadership grip, and including in that some things that come from your giftedness, from your team styles, and from your bodybuilding role that was not in the coaching report before. And we'll actually have a GRIP-Birkman. Actually, we're going to call it right now your user's manual, your personal user's manual to share with other people about how to help you be your very best. And then there is the career exploration. This is a brief career exploration report. There is a larger, longer, more detailed report available from Birkman that, again, signature trained people would have access to. But this short report is very different. Birkman tells us that this first attempt at the wheel is probably going to be changed because the colors already confuse some people. They wonder what's the significance of the colors. And the significance is 0. There is no significance to the colors. They just wanted to make it look colorful. But since colors are so important to Birkman, this confuses people. So what you see here is the darker colors are showing you exactly where John's report is and his relative score on each of these different job family areas. And the lighter shading part shows, for example, in construction and extraction, John doesn't show up on that one at all. And on life, physical, and social science, he's very, very low. And he's very, very low on transportation and material moving. So the wheel is just another way of showing a graph for his scores. The really important part is when we get down to the top 6 categories. Each person's individual report will have their top 6 areas to explore. And so construction extraction, excuse me, because of the color, I got confused on that one. The color for that one is very high on John. I take that back. His construction extraction is very high, and that actually is his first one that comes up in his top 6. Construction and extraction, management, community and social service, installation, maintenance and repair, production, engineering, and architecture. So you can see how all of those things might tie into a lot of red and a lot of yellow that might be coming out of his Birkman map with his interests, to be able to kind of pull that together now. And what you will be able to see is this is just, like I said, a very general report, but it is included for us in the basics report. And both the basics report and the signature report will have an action plan. This in the PDF file that you would receive with your report. This is a fillable page, fillable form. So you can actually type into it, type what your plan might be that you want to work on, and then you have a record that you can hold on to of what are the changes that you're expecting to come as a result of having been in this GRIP-Birkman team build or this GRIP-Birkman one-on-one coaching. So that is the basics report. Now let me jump back up and continue with what you get in the signature report. And that is, we do come now to the behaviors, which is your components. There are 9 components now. We were used to having 11, but we now have 9. The 2 that will not show up are challenge and freedom. Those are only going to be addressed. They are still there, but they are in a separate report that can be ordered separately. But Birkman is moving toward phasing those completely out because they're now offering a new training called Perspectives Training, which is really, they're marketing that as a C-suite kind of a market for executive leaders, and talking about 4 different perspectives that you might have that are with the combinations of your challenge and your freedom scores. So we do not have those. They never were components anyway. We always had to explain them differently. Now, we don't even have to explain them. They're just not there. So you're looking at these 9 components. And again, in this wheel configuration, the colors here do matter. One of the new things about looking at the components is we see how each of the components contributes to a color. And that will tell us more about why your stress, your needs, and your usual behaviors are plotted where they are on the map. And we get a dashboard. One thing you'll notice that is not on this dashboard is the stress behavior. We've said on the Birkman map that the circle and the square are always together. And we kind of continue with that in the dashboard. While they get down, when they get down into their actual reports, they will see sometimes that the 2 are not the same. And what we will basically say when someone says, wait a minute, my stress need is this, and my stress is this, and my need is there, why are they different? We'll say, oh yeah, in your case, they aren't the same, are they? Let's talk about what that means for you. And it will be an opportunity for still more conversation. We'll see then, and I'm quickly going to just run through them. You'll be able to dig down into this more with your own reports. You'll see very similar language to what we have seen in the strengths and needs pages. As you're looking now at the description of the components, You'll see new terminology, but the interesting thing is the terms that are now being used for the components were often in the descriptions of them anyway. So social energy might have come up in a description of this component, which again, I'm not going to use the old name. You can make those correlations if you want to. There are three energies. Social energy is talking about how we relate to people in group, your sociability. And the social energy will talk about, the descriptions will always talk about the high end of the scale. So social energy, if you had high social energy, then you would be very sociable, very approachable, have preferences for working in group, for team participation, all those things. And that would be true whether it's your usual behavior, needs, or stress. That description will hold for all of those. You'll see now that we have a kind of a mountain graph here as we're looking at the three different ways of looking at your behavior. And what this helps us to do is we're able to say to someone, for example, this person who has a 17 need in social energy, you know what? It's awfully difficult for you to see the people over on the other side of the mountain. When your need is so low over here, you just can't see the other side of the mountain. But if we have someone who has some scores that are getting toward the peak there, toward the center, well, they're able to more easily see more of the people on the other side as well as people on their side of the mountain. And it's an interesting way for us to kind of approach how we are explaining what this means for them. So there are three energies: social energy, physical energy, and emotional energy. Physical energy is going to talk about just that, whether you have a preference for action or a preference for expressing yourself more through thought. And emotional energy, well, just talking about how this is talking about your openness, your ability to express yourself, or your willingness to express emotion to other people. Doesn't mean do you or don't you have emotions. We all have emotions. That's still the same. Self-consciousness is one that we have had a lot of discussion about, but the term there is coming back to what was this component actually trying to measure? And it's measuring how sensitive are we to the way we communicate with other people one-on-one. And that's why we're going to be calling it self-consciousness. Assertiveness is the tendency to want to speak up, to express our opinions. This is the component where we had suggest versus tell. Low side would be suggesting. High side would be more telling people exactly what we expect. So we're more self-assertive if we're on the high side of this one. Insistence is the only yellow component. And it talks about how we deal with structure. Hint, hint. Incentives. This is talking about how we are motivated. What's our preference for the kinds of rewards that we like to receive? Do we prefer to have personal rewards, or do we prefer for those to be group? And are we more interested in how the group is going than we are in our individual advancement? Restlessness. That's having to do with change, hint, hint, and how we are addressing variety in our daily routine. Thought is the one that has not changed. That is the one component whose name has not changed. Thought is still thought. Your decision-making process and concern for the consequences, making the right decision, and how you can see, like with John Q. Public, he's got everything the same on this one. And so he says, hey, sometimes I'm okay with making a pretty quick decision, but sometimes, guess what? I need to have much more time to consider it. And so he's kind of, getting close to being on both sides of the mountain there. But when he's under stress, he's going to kind of lean toward the high side there. And then, as I said, you also get the strengths report and the career report with the signature report. So there is a lightning fast race through the signature report to just talk about what is there. I suppose that you're likely to have some questions about all of that. And so let's open up the mics and take on those questions, whatever they might be. Oh, one last thing before we actually get into the to your discussions is I'd like to point out one of the neat things now about the components that you're going to enjoy, I hope, is the icons that are with this. Those icons are significant as just kind of a trigger to help us think about what does each of these have to do, what is it dealing with, that sort of thing. And the colors are significant also for each of the components. There's a significant addition that helps us to know where are they coming from and what are they pointing to. So Jay, did we have any questions that were typed in?
No, we don't.
I realize I was rushing pretty quickly through that. The mics can be open though if you want to bring up anything, ask anything at all. Now's the time.
So Larry, we will have access to these new reports after November the 1st automatically.
Yeah, anyone who has been trained as a coach, when the switch is flipped on November the 1st, we will all go to these reports. As John said, we don't have the option of letting people continue to use the old reports. Birkman has simply made the decision that when we change over to the new reports, we have to change the whole system. And everybody in the GRIP-Birkman community has to make that change together. And that's why we have been postponing it. Some of us with our personal accounts have gone ahead and made the change so that we could start working with the new reports. And let me say that I have worked with several teams as part of our pilot experimentation and getting some of the bugs worked out. And no one has complained about the reports. Everyone has been very complimentary. The people that had the large 77-page, massive, full component report from us before, and now they received this 31-page signature report. Everyone has been very, very complimentary of it and said, this is easier to read, it's more concise, and we've had really positive feedback.
Wayne has a question.
Yeah, Wayne.
Yeah. And I agree with that 100%. To me, this report is something that a client can look at and gain a whole lot more understanding on their own.
Yeah.
Which then allows you to spend more time with the team in doing team building rather than trying to explain the report.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
My one question is on the introvert extrovert. To me, the direct and indirect, help me understand why we went to extrovert, introvert. The direct and introvert, the direct and indirect seems to be easier to explain because people have such a misconception, a misunderstanding of what extrovert and introvert is. And so, to me, those words bring in a lot of baggage.
Yeah. Well,
and so now I have to kind of unpack the extrovert introvert baggage, where before I was able to talk about, well, direct with, indirect.
Yeah, I think I know where you're coming from with that, Wayne. And Birkman made the decision that to go with these terms, first of all, because that is what Dr. Birkman was measuring. Extroversion and introversion, we can look at his early writings and we can even see those terms. He used those originally and he moved away from those terms because they were not in common use. And it's true that there's a lot of writing out there, and some people use extrovert and introvert in one way and some people might use it in something of another way. But there's a pretty general agreement. When I'm talking about an extroverted person, I'm talking about someone who usually is comfortable speaking up in the group. An introverted person, someone who's usually a little bit more reserved. When you see the descriptions of these, you will see that the extroverted descriptions will still look very much the same. If we're looking at the stress and need, when we come down into John Q's report, and we look at his need that's down toward the introverted side, you don't like for people to interrupt you unnecessarily. You encourage trust and fairness. You want people to invite your input. You don't see, that's an introverted behavior, wanting them to invite his input rather than him offering it himself. If he were on the extroverted side of that, it would be willing to offer your opinion even when it's not asked for. So what I've discovered in my use of this already is that I have not had to spend any time explaining to people, what do we mean by introvert or extrovert? I did have to explain, what do you mean by direct communication or indirect communication?
Yeah. Well, and the one positive I do see as I'm looking at this now a little bit more is, there a lot of times there's people that say, well, I'm kind of extroverted, I'm kind of introverted. I'm not really, and so it's like, well, so the closer I am to the line between the green and the blue, or the red and the yellow, then would be more of a blending between extrovert and introvert, and might bring some better understanding of that.
I think so.
Someone who's like deep blue or deep yellow is going to be more introverted, or someone who's up top is going to be more extroverted.
Yeah, like with some of us that have seen that expression in our reports, selectively sociable.
Right.
And it says, yeah, I may act a little bit extroverted in some circumstances, but I may also be very much more introverted. Or some of us that might have extroverted usual behavior and introverted needs, we can explain that then to say, yeah, there are times when I really do need to be off by myself and I will look like a hermit. But there are other times when I really enjoy being out there, and putting myself out there.
Larry, this is a question that comes from Neil. So the basic report will have the new map and interest layout. How does the signature report relate?
Neil, I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but how they relate. Well, you will relate, I guess, in the same way we have in the past. You get the map first, then you get the components. With the signature report, you get everything that's in the basics report, which includes the basic, the Birkman map and the one interest report from the Birkman Insights and the career exploration. You get those, and the interests. You get those four things basically in the basics report. The only thing the signature report adds to that is the components. And so I guess that's the relationship. If you're going to, let's say if you're going to do just a half-day team build with someone, chances are you could just use the basics report.
So you're showing us the signature report.
This is the signature report. The basics report is the signature report without the components. And in fact, I'll go back to our newsletter real quickly and bring that up to show you what the basics report looks like. Hello, there we go. I need to get down here. The basics report, though, is, as I said, is exactly the same. There we go. Here's John Q's basics report. And you see it's 20 pages long. The components report is 31 pages. It just adds the components to it, that's all. Everything that's there we are with the table of contents. Everything that's there is in the signature report also.
So what we're losing from the old report, and you might not want to talk about this, but, is organizational focus and intellectual styles.
That's right. We will not have organizational focus. We will not have intellectual styles as we had in the Birkman foursome before.
In either report, we won't have those in the base or the signature.
Those are going away completely. Now, what are we losing with organizational focus? I know that some people have done that. Most people, in terms of intellectual styles and work preferences, those reports, they've only used the scores that were related to intellectual styles, the global, conceptual, concrete, and linear. And we had some exercises that we were doing with that were stretching it a little bit in terms of its what it was intended, how it was intended to be used, but it was helping a lot of people to get insights into their team building. So yes, we're losing those, but we're gaining some other things that we can use to get the same, to get to the same concepts, to get to the same things. We can still do some team building activities that will give us the exact same information and perhaps in a better form than we were getting it even with the organizational focus. What we were discovering was people were constantly having to waste a lot of time trying to explain how the colors of the organizational focus bars related to their Birkman map. And sometimes they could not see any correlation. And so by pulling that out, we've eliminated some of that confusion, and we'll have a much more concise kind of an activity in our team building that we can do to get to that same concept.
Hey, Larry, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you unshare your screen and then go back into your screen? Just share it for a little bit.
There we go.
When you need to, you can go back in. It was just flashing, at least on mine. I don't know about others, and I didn't interrupt you because I had no clue of what to tell you to do. So going back in might help.
Okay. If we need to go back in, we'll try it again. Thanks, Jay. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, so did that help, Neil, with that question?
Yes, thank you. When you showed the picture of the basic report, then I got a better idea of what I could expect for what I use with most of my clients.
Good, good. Any other questions or comments?
Tim, we can't hear you. I see you're trying to talk, but it doesn't show you as muted, but.
Oops.
Try again.
I'm not a certified lip reader, so I can't help him with that.
Yeah.
How about now?
Ah, there we are.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I'm just thinking out loud about some of we used to have a pretty clear natural me or I with the interests in the lifestyle grid, and then a natural we with organizational focus and the intellectual styles, which really helped a lot with some of that team building and also confused a lot with some of that team building. Mm-hmm. So the one thing so I guess what I'm asking is, how can we get some of the same insights without having the benefit of those particular reports? For some people, the all short bars on the organizational focus was a life-changing insight because they always felt like they didn't fit in the group and wondered why people looked at them funny when they come up with ideas or suggestions. Mm-hmm. And then we told them that's not weakness, it's uniqueness. And it just, boy, it was awesome. It just, more than once, that's been life-changing for people that we've talked to, gone through the process. So what would be some ways that we could get to the same discovery for people like that? How can we get to some of the same group dynamic issues that intellectual styles? Well, I guess I'm asking more than one question, but I think you know where I'm going. So you guys had some special training at Birkman. Did they give you any hints about how to use the new report in getting some of the same insights?
Not exactly, no, because we're not trying to just replace old reports. This is what the new reports are doing, and that's what we're focusing on. If we see that the reports are not meeting a real need, then okay, we're going to have to do the same thing that we've done in the past, and that is develop new tools in order to get to the same concepts that we felt we need to be addressing. And so, for example, one of those is we have developed a tool for writing your user manual that talks about your strengths. And in that user manual, it will also include, here are some of the biggest mistakes you could make with me. even without having that report that you might be familiar with out of the Birkman On Demand, which is now Birkman Insights, Tim, even without having that biggest mistakes report, people will be able to have picked up from their coaching and from their team build, here are some things that I know will set me off to my stress behavior. And so that's a mistake you could make with me. And if you would avoid that, that would help me. So there'll be some things like that that we'll just need to develop ourselves to be the kinds of tools that will help us to use the instruments that we have in order to get the information that we want to get.
Yeah, and I developed that tool, Introducing Yourself Through Your Lifestyle Grid, which is a lead into that. So I can see some of that. Let's see, I had another question right at the, so some of this becomes us using our own words, describing ourselves based on Birkman stuff. The areas of the Birkman On Demand, is there, the old Birkman On Demand was a separate add-in report. You paid $20 for it, or your organization did. Overwhelmingly long for most people, because you saw 125 pages, didn't even want to try. But once you saw it was 3, 4, or 5 bullet points on a page, and you could choose one of 40 different topics, you thought, wow, this is really helpful, especially if I could sit down and just share these 2 or 3 pages with somebody. So do we still have access to what we used to call the full Birkman On Demand report, now Birkman Insights?
Coaches have never had access to that and still will not have access to that. However, anyone who is trained at consultant level, or as we now call it, Birkman Certified Professional, if they've been through Signature Suite training, they will have access to all of the Birkman Insights reports. There are about 40 of those, and you can pick and choose the ones that you might want to use in your particular practice. So there is no extra charge for those. It is now part of the Signature Suite package.
Okay, that's helpful.
So
Yeah.
anyone who has certification, you've been through Signature Suite training, or in the past you've been through Birkman certification or advanced or senior training, then those people, yes, will have access to all of the Insights reports.
Okay.
Larry, I thought, why are we inserting then Insight training, a GRIP for Insight training into the coaches training? I thought the basic coaches were going to be able to have access to at least some of the Insights.
Right now, no.
Okay.
Right now, no. Right now, now, in our account, they are there, but we don't have a system for helping them to choose those, because coaches do not have direct access to the Birkman Direct system.
You have to, in other words, you have to be a Birkman consultant.
Yeah.
And in our level, a trainer. There's a whole bunch of us that are coaches. There's less of us that are trainers, and there's about a handful of us that are senior Birkman consultants. And I think you just referenced this, but I wanted to clarify. My understanding is that if you've had senior Birkman consultant training, you don't have to go get the training for the Signature Suite training, or do you?
Technically, no one does.
Okay.
Technically, no one has to go to that special training.
Okay. I'm just keeping the conversation going. I plan to go to the Birkman thing in Atlanta in February, and plan to take the Perspectives course, which would be the understanding the challenge and freedom scores further. So again, I just would love to hear who's going, what training people are taking, so that we can
Now that's
be together, all that kind of stuff.
Right. That's a question beyond coaches. That's for some of the guys that are trainers. I know that Ken is planning on being there from GRIP-Birkman. Jay's planning on being there. I think Steve Potter might be planning on being there. So some of the guys that are Birkman consultant trained will be at that training.
If some of you leadership team folks could help coordinate conversations in that regard, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys will get together there in Atlanta for sure. Yeah.
Good.
Good. Any other questions or comments?
We have just a couple of minutes.
Could you real quickly go through? I'm at a coach level.
Yeah.
So could you real quickly go through various levels of training that
Sure.
needed to move up the ladder?
Yeah, let's knock over the leadership ladder as we're doing that.
Right.
However, there are privileges of certification that that are required. Actually, as a GRIP-Birkman community, we're only talking about two, and that is coaches training, which you've already been through. And the other level will be signature training. That is where we are giving people who want to go further. That's where we give the components. That's where we talk about comparative reports. We talk about group reports, and we do a lot more scenario type coaching at that one than we'll be doing at our coaches training. We get deeper down into how do you look at multiple reports together. We get deeper into that than we're able to get in the coaches training. That's a 3-day training that we now are authorized by Birkman to offer. It's the exact same training that Birkman offers for their signature training, but we'll be able to offer that through GRIP-Birkman at a much reduced price.
Okay. Then what's out there past that?
Well, through Birkman, there is advanced training. There is, let's see, you start out as a Birkman certified professional, then you can become an advanced Birkman certified professional, I think it is. Then you can become a master Birkman certified professional. So there are those 3 levels within Birkman in terms of the learning. Mostly, though, what those levels are giving you is just greater understanding at deeper levels.
So if I come to the GRIP-Birkman signature training, can I then engage directly with Birkman on these other levels of deepening my understanding?
Absolutely, yes.
And they accept that, and they will accept that.
Yeah, not just accept it. That is Birkman training. We are Birkman authorized trainers.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I wish we could go on and on, but we try to honor your time. It is an hour. The hour is upon us. And I really do appreciate your attentiveness and all of you being with us. In our next Coaches Cafe, we're going to go even further into this. John will have some more details for us to look at as we're getting ready for the change. And I really hope that all of you are going to make every effort to be with us in Indiana, where we'll actually be doing some of the training exercises to bring coaches up to speed to using the new reports. We'll have some good group activities, and we'll have some good team building activities that will be at that celebration. So we're really hoping that you'll all be there with us. Jay, can you think of anything else? And if not, would you close us out, please?
Sure. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. So let me pray for us. Father, I just thank you for each one on this call. I'm grateful that you have placed us in your body, and that's gifted, that's unique, and that's wonderfully diverse. And Father, help us to be instruments of your Spirit to unify, to help people and empower people to see how you have shaped them and gifted them to work in amazing ways for your glory, and so that others can know Jesus. Thank you for Larry and Susan and their training. Thank you for the rest of these participants and their areas and where they're influencing. Continue to give them fruitfulness today through your Spirit. In Christ we pray. Amen.